Today we will be talking on examining the training and evaluation program. The process of examining a training program is called as training evaluation. It not only ensures whether the training are available to implement the learning in their respective workplaces or to the regular work routines, it also judges whether or not a training program is worthwhile in terms of the set objectives. Whenever we set the program, whenever we set the agenda of any kind of a training program, we have certain set objectives in mind, and whatever we do, the flow is in terms of obtaining those objectives. So evaluation centers around whether or not the training program is worthwhile in terms of obtaining those set objectives or not. A comprehensive and effective evaluation plan is very critical component of every successful training program. Now, if we do not do the evaluation, we will not be able to judge whether the program and the takeaways of those training program are worthwhile or not. It should be structured to generate the information of the impact of training on the reactions, on the amount of learning that has taken place, on the trainee's behavior and its contribution to the job organization. Therefore, evaluation of training is a measure of how well it has met the needs of the human resources. An index of contribution of training to contributional and organizational success through the evaluation strengthens the training as a key organizational activity. Now, according to Hamblin, 1970, defined the evaluation of training as any attempt to obtain the information that is a feedback of training program and to assess the value of the training in the light of that information for improving the further training. Training is an investment whose results are not evident immediately. So the jurisdiction of all the training program can be made only when they are critically evaluated in terms of the advantages that an organization gets in comparison to the investment made. The investments can be measured in terms of the money. The advantages can be both monetary as well as non-monetary. Being an activity, it involves a great degree of human factor. The evaluation of training has always been very difficult. Generally, the trainers have not liked the idea of other people auditing what they do. They have not been very happy with the evaluation techniques that have been applied. Now, let me give you some insights relating to what are the possible advantages of a training evaluation. 1. It reduces the possibility of disagreement between the evaluators, number 1. Number 2, it provides a very concrete feedback, followed by it provides a continuous data about progressing of the learning. Not only this, it permits various positive comparisons of pre and post training problem status. Now, what is the purpose of training evaluation is a big question. The 5 main purposes of the training evaluation are as follows. The first is a feedback. What do you mean by a feedback? It helps in giving a feedback to the candidates by defining the objectives and linking it to the learning outcomes. Number 2, research. It helps in ascertaining the relationship between the acquired knowledge, transfer of knowledge at the workplace and the training. Now, what is the purpose of training evaluation? Number 3, control. It helps in controlling the training program because if the training is not effective, then it can be dealt with accordingly. Number 4, the power games. At times, the top management uses the evaluative data to manipulate in their own benefits. Number 5, intervention. It helps in determining that whether the actual outcomes are aligned with the expected outcomes. The lack of effective evaluation is responsible for keeping the training in subordinate, non-strategic role within the organizations. Most business aspects are scrutinized by the top management from time to time. They have interest in knowing the cost benefit delivered by the marketing. What is the purpose of training evaluation? Finance, research, operation divisions, but have not been unable to do so about the training. There has been a lack of management information leading to lack of belief in ability of training function to contribute strategically to the business. All the managers and the trainers have always been curious to know the benefits of training and seeking to devise the systems of the measurement to assist in the assessment of the benefits. Now, what is the purpose of training evaluation? Evaluation may appear to be the final phase of training cycle, but due to consideration should be given to it at each stage. It is also very important to build in the phases in order to evaluate the total process. Evaluation is definitely a very important integral part of the training cycle. Now let me give you some insights of the purposes of the training evaluation. You can see a circle on the screens. The last is evaluation training. Identifying training needs is the first most thing, followed by setting the objectives of evaluation, implementing the training program and choosing the training methods, identifying the training needs and setting up the training objectives. The starting point to evaluate the training effectiveness has to establish the relationship between the training and the strategic objectives of the company. The trainer has to know the strategic objectives and relate to most effective training response. In developing the organizations, the human resources view is considered during setting up of the strategic objectives. However, many organizations take very important strategic decisions having massive training requirements and the manpower resources without keeping in mind such requirements. Therefore, the training should not only be related to strategic business needs, it should be a part of the setting strategic objectives. Now, setting a clear and a measurable objective is a precondition to effective training evaluation. The training must address the skills it purposes to teach, how to and why these trainings are needed, the method to be used for imparting the training, how the trainee will demonstrate the skills that have been learned, and how the trainer will assess the learning that has been applied for. Objectives are always more effective when set in the behavioral terms, the terms which describe the expected behavior as the output of the training. The next point is your implementing the training. Once objectives have been set, the trainer can start identifying the various methods of implementation. There are a large number of training methods available at the disposal of the trainer. The choice of the media, the methods of implementation have a lot of impact on the training evaluation. Each of these must be evaluated as a part of the training cycle and should form a part of the final evaluation of the whole process. The training methodology, the choice of the method, the media can also have a very significant effect on the measurement and assessment of the outcome. After having identified the training needs, set the objectives and having chosen the media, post-training evaluation for training effectiveness needs to be carried out. Now, what is the process of training evaluation? The first is before training. The learner's skill and knowledge are assessed before the training program. At the start of the training, candidates generally perceive it as a waste of resources because the most of the times the candidates are unaware of the objectives and the learning outcomes of the program. Once aware, they are asked to give their opinions on the methods used and whether those methods conform to the candidate's preferences and the learning styles. Now, what is the process of training evaluation? During the training, it is the phase at which the instructions is started. This phase usually consists of the short test at regular intervals, and after the training, it is the phase when the learner's skills and the knowledge are assessed, again to measure the effectiveness of the training. This phase is designed to determine whether the training has had the desired effect at individual department or at the organizational levels. Now, there are certain evaluation techniques for this phase. Training effectiveness. Training effectiveness is the degree to which the trainee are able to learn and apply the knowledge and the skills acquired during the program. The attitudes, the interests, the values and expectations of the trainee and the training environment influence it. Next, we have a training effectiveness. A training program is likely to be more effective when the trainees are involved in their jobs and have a career plans. The contents of the training program and the ability of the trainers also determine the training effectiveness to a certain extent. Then we have a pre-training measurement. The pre-training evaluation is a method of judging a worth of a program before the program activities begin. Now, the objectives of the evaluation is as follows. First, to determine the appropriateness of the context of the training activity, number one. Number two, to help in determining the relevant training objectives. Then we have a post-training evaluation. Post-training evaluation is the evaluation which is done after the training program. The training is a human phenomena, so there is a large variation in its results. The results of the training can show themselves in both long run as well as short run. There can be a varying effect of the training on the trainees. So, post-training evaluation becomes a very, very tedious exercise for the trainers. Any kind of a mistake can lead to a wrong conclusions and even hamper the training process in the future. In general terms, post-training evaluation can be understood in terms of the three distinct phases. 1. Immediate effect of the training. This relates to the changes in the knowledge, skills or the behavior immediately after the training experience. Such an evaluation attempts to assess whether or not the training has been effective in communicating the message. Immediate evaluation helps in answering the following question. Do the trainees understand what is now required of them? And have they acquired the necessary behavioral skills or to able to implement the learning? Is again a question mark. The third is the immediate. This phase of evaluation is conducted after some time period has elapsed after the training. During this period, the training would have put the skills learned during the training into practice. This evaluation shows whether the knowledge, the skills, the behavior and the learned during the training being used on the job or not. In other words, evaluation seeks to find whether the change in behavior, skills and attitude as a result of training can be identified or not. Then we have a long term. This refers to a long term effectiveness of the training on an individual, the unit or even the organization. Post-training evaluation determines the value of training delivered and assesses the effectiveness of the training towards achievement of the training objectives, effectiveness of the learning process. In other words, whether the trainee have learned what was set out to teach them, whether the learning has been applied into the practice or not, and whether the applied learning has brought about the changes required in the relation to the attitudes, skills and behavior. Now we have another topic called what is the criteria for evaluating the training effectiveness. The criteria for evaluating the training effectiveness. The following criteria may also be used to measure the effectiveness of the training reactions. We have a trainee's reactions to the objectives, contents, and the methods of training are good indicators of effectiveness. In case the trainees considered the program worthwhile and liked it, the training can be considered very effective. Then we have a criteria for evaluating the training effectiveness. The extent to which the trainees have gained the desired knowledge and skills during the training period is a useful basis of evaluating the training effectiveness. Behavior improved in the job behavior of the trainees reflects the manner and the extent to which the learning has been put to the practice. Next, we have a criteria for evaluating the training effectiveness. We have results: productivity improvement, quality improvement, cost reduction, accident reduction, reduction in labor turnover, absenteeism are the outcomes of the training which can be used for evaluating effectiveness. Next, we have the principles of evaluation. The principles of evaluation training needs should be identified and reviewed concurrently with the business and personal development plan process. There should be a correlation with the needs of the business and individual. The principles of evaluation. Organizational group, individual level training need should be identified and evaluated. The techniques of evaluation should be appropriate. The evaluation function should be in place before the training takes place. The outcome of evaluation should be used to inform the business and the training process. Next, we have the types of evaluation. Evaluation can be into the following types: formative and summative. The types of evaluation. What do you mean by a formative evaluation? Formative evaluation is a method of judging the worth of a program while the program activities are in progress. This evaluation focuses on the process which permits the learners and the instructors to follow and monitor how well the instructional objectives are being met. This allows the learner to master the required skills and the knowledge. Then we have summative evaluation. Summative evaluation is a method of judging the worth of a program at the end of the program activities, focusing on the outcomes. Then we have an evaluative design. Designing a successful training program involves a variety of people coordinating their efforts to achieve the desired outcomes. Clients and end users of the program may be interviewed to determine the real training requirements. Then we have evaluation design. Instructional designs will design and develop the program. Administrators will organize the training schedules, the venue logistics, and if the program incorporates e-learning component. Information technology professionals will be involved at a number of points. For reiterating the program development, a phased system approach is often referred to as Instructional System Design, that is ISD model. Then we have the evaluation design. Benefits of using a structured phase approach is that the end product is more likely to meet the genuine needs of the clients and other stakeholder groups. This approach will also help to ensure that no development activity is started before a necessary pre-activity is particularly completed. Now we have an Addie model, ADDIE model. It is the most popular model in rendering the specific phases using the instructional system design approach, and this is called as ADDIE model. It has 5 stages involved deeply into it. A stands for analyze, D stands for design, Again, D stands for development, I stands for implementation, and E stands for evaluation. So this Addie model is the most popular model in terms of a design approach, which is called as instructional system design approach. Again, these 5 stages have to be kept in mind during this Addie model. Now, when you talk about all the 5 stages, each phase is characterized by a set of activity and the product output in the form of a tangible deliverable. The outputs and the activities associated with each phase may be summarized as follows. The first is your Addie model. The first is to analyze. It has to clarify the organizational and the training program objectives in mind. Agree the scope of the training program. It has to articulate the training administration activities and requirements. You have to determine the strategies for transferring the learned skills to the workplace. Detailed project risk is another thing. Opportunities and assumptions is another. Investigate the constraints in implementing the program, including the technological, budget, timing, and duration. Now, when you talk about the Addie model, you have to list the training vendor, the training selection criteria, determine the target participants, program entry requirements, participant characteristics, and the special needs. You have to determine the extent of the training participations. Now, when you talk about the Addie model, let us do everything in detail. The knowledge, the skill assessment required, to determine the task currently performed by the target participants and the level of performance required. Following the training estimates, program design, development, implementation, and evaluate the cost, effort required and scheduled. The second, we have a design. You have to translate the program objectives into the terminal and the enabling learning objectives, quantify the program development, implementation and evaluation of the cost, effort required, and determine the program structure and the sequence. You have to determine the program duration and the pace, decide the program format, the mode of the delivery, specify the type of participant, assessment, and the assessment conditions. The next is your determine program. You have to evaluate the methodology, data collection methods, timing and reporting formats. You have to articulate and transfer of the learning methods and the workplace support. It has to determine implementation and the training administration requirements. Then we have to develop the communication packs for program stakeholders. You have to develop the session plans. You have to be very particular about the trainer guides, learning guides, and the trainer and participant resources. Develop the trainer and on the job, etc. Then we have to develop in the Addie model, you have to develop the coaching or mentoring guides and resources. You have to develop the technology, infrastructure, software development, participative assessment, develop the project and the program evaluation instruments. You have to conduct a pilot program to test the program meets client's requirement. You have to review and implement evaluation cost, effort required and rescheduled. Then we have to do the implementation part. You have to roll out the program, communications to the stakeholders, produce the program material and aids, and you have to definitely install the technology, infrastructural and services. You have to set up the administrative databases, the systems, installs on the job aids. You have to prepare the coaches, you have to prepare the mentors, You have to book the avenue and the venue, accommodation and the travel arrangements. Then we have to set up the venue and the accommodation. You have to schedule the participants, conduct the training sessions, implement the training transfer strategies. You have to conduct the participant assessment, collect the participation feedback. Next and the last stage when you talk about the Addie model is to evaluate. You have to collect the training program, evaluate the data, you have to collect the project evaluation data, you have to review the training program performance, the number of employees trained, percentage of the participant passed, participation satisfaction, review the project performance, cost, schedule, scope and the stakeholder satisfaction, project and team satisfaction. The report program and the project performance results, the phases of the Addie model, and are also iterative in the learning resulting from evaluation phases are the feedback into the next project. Now when you talk about the Addie model, which we have discussed at length, the report program, the project performance results, the phases of the Addie model are also iterative in nature, and the learning resulting from evaluation phases are the feedback into the next project. In this way, each successive project may improve its delivery of the expected organizational benefits. Evaluation effectiveness of training and development. Measuring the effectiveness of the training program consumes the valuable time and the resources. The Kirkpatrick model. The most well-known and the used model for measuring the effectiveness of the training program was developed by the Donald Kirkpatrick in the late 1950s. The basic structure of the Kirkpatrick's 4-level model is shown as follows. We have level 1. How did the participants react to the program? Level 2. To what extent did participation change their learning back in the workplace as a result of the training? Number 3. To what extent did participation change their behavior back in the workplace as a result of the training? And the level 4. What organizational benefits resulted from the training? An evaluation at each level answers whether the fundamental requirement of the training program was an evaluation, and it is not that conducting an evaluation at one level is more important than the other. All levels of evaluation are important, and in fact, the Kirkpatrick model explains the usefulness of performing the training evaluation at each level. Each level provides a diagnostic checkpoint for problems at the successive levels. So, if the participants did not learn level 2, participation reactions gathered at level 1, it will reveal what barriers to learning and now moving up to the next level. If the participations did not use the skills once back in the workplaces. Then we have level 3. Perhaps they did not learn the required skills in the first phase. Following are the sources to conduct the training evaluation at the different levels. We have level 1, reaction, completed participation, feedback, questionnaire, informal comments from the participation and the focus group sessions with the participations. Then we have level 2, learning, pre and post test scores, on the job assessment and the supervisory reports. Level 3 is behavior, completed self-assessment, questionnaires, on the job observations and the reports from the customers, peers and participants, managers. And the level 4, that is the financial reports, qualify the inspections and interview with the sales manager. There are available in hard copy and the online quantitative reports, production and job records, interviews with participation and the managers. The peers, the customers, the suppliers, the regulators, the checklist, the test, the direct motivation, questionnaires, self-rating and multi-rating sources. Monitoring of the training monitoring is an intermittent services of the observations in time, carried out to show the extent of compliances with the formulated standards of degree of deviation from an unexpected norm. The monitoring is a very regular observation and the recording of the activities taking place in the project or the program. It is a process of routine gathering information on all the aspects of the project. Monitoring also involves giving the feedback about the program, the progress of the projects to the donors, implementing and beneficiary of the benefits. Then we have the training evaluation techniques. The commonly used training evaluation techniques are the post-course assessment, pre- and post-course test, management briefing, management debriefing, questionnaires, appraisals, and training or promotions. So the training evaluation techniques are as follows. The assessment I develop centers, repertory grids, surveys, training interviews, trainers observed behavior, participant observations, records of performance, and the action plan follow-up. The first is your post-course assessment. The post-course assessment are often conducted immediately after the end of a training program and are most frequently used methods for evaluating a training program. Then we have a post-course arrangements. This evaluation is based on the fact that if the training has been effective and has delivered in an accountable manner, the trainees should respond positively. However, it has been observed by some of the researchers that the positive response of the trainee is not as much as because of the effectiveness of the training process, but also because of their enjoyment of it. The post-course assessment, hence the trainees should not place too much emphasis on the individual comments taken from a post-course assessment. However, a complete analysis of a set of assessment forms can provide a useful insight into those parts of the program which the trainees believe to have been the most effective. Then we have a post-course assessment. Despite the limitations, the views and the opinions of the trainees should not discard lightly. Particularly if a consistent view is expressed by a range of people. Then we have a post-course assessment. This method can be especially useful in assisting the trainers to evaluate and assess the effectiveness of a particular instructors or presenters, especially if the evidence about the similar sessions or the courses being presented by some other people is available or not. It may well be that one of the most useful benefits of a post-course assessment is in assisting the trainers to assess the skill of the instructors. Then we have a post-training evaluation. The post-training evaluation is a method of the judging the worth of a program at the end of the program activist. The focus is on the outcomes and it tries to judge whether the transfer of training to the job taken place or not. Then we have a pre and post courses test. An ideal way of measuring the learning is to measure it before, that is the start of the program, and then at measurement of the program set knowledge when it is definitely over. When you talk about a pre and post course, it is often helpful in deciding the needs to be built upon, particularly when the teaching as a specific skill. The results of the training are quite visible by such an evaluation. However, the program is that the reliable techniques for the pre and the post evaluation should not be available. Then we have a management briefing in place. Management briefing is this particular technique that the trainer moves out of the area within his own responsibility and becomes much more reliant on the trainees and training line managers. Ideally, the training should always be responsible of one of the line managers, but in actual practice, they are reluctant to accept this part of their responsibility. Now, when you talk about the management briefing, they prefer to pass it on to the trainer. Management briefing can be made very useful of involving the manager as well as assisting the trainer in the evaluation process. The most common way of conducting a management briefing is to the trainer to provide the manager with a detailed set of objectives and an outline of the content of a particular program. The manager then discusses this with the trainee, and together they work out some personal and specific objectives which they be related to the trainee knowledge, skills or attitude. The trainee who attends a program having been fully briefed by the manager, who is fully committed to achieve the organizational objectives, will be well prepared for the learning process. Then we have a management debriefing. The management debriefing, this method of evaluation also requires the complete commitment of the line managers, and they review the learning process with the trainee after the program. However, it is very important to note that the application of learning within that job, the trainee is expected to do and to evaluate it, and not merely the learning process. Fundamentally, the problem is identified by the vast majority of the people who attended the training program is that there is a little or less opportunity for them to apply for the learning acquired when they are returned to their workplaces. The management debriefing can obviously overcome this problem not only by reviewing the learning but also by assessing the training to understand how to work and how to do it on a workplace. Then we have the questionnaires, which is very vital part. The questionnaire is a very important instrument to gather the information about effectiveness of the training. Any systematic training evaluation must involve the training departments to follow up at the various intervals and the people who have attended a specific program, and if the objective is to assess the retention and the application. The questionnaires should be designed primarily to assess the level of the skills and the development which the trainee has retained during the period and following the training period after 6 or 3 months or 12 months, whichever later and the training deems to be appropriate. The training should be encouraged to answer honestly and openly without relevance to the notes and of course to the handouts. Next we have the questionnaires. A second important part used in the questionnaire is to identify how well the learning has been applied. The trainer might seek answers to the following questions. What benefits have the trainees gained? What opportunities do they have for increasing their learning? And considerable benefit can also be obtained from the negative responses. The trainer would want to know what learning has been done, applied, and why. Is it because of the learning has been very relevant, and is it because of the timings what has been opportune? On the basis of such responsibilities and responses, the trainer can assess whether or not the training basically believed the delivered is relevant and the applicable to the particular circumstances which needs to be definitely evaluated. The questionnaires allow the flexibility of covering up a large number of responses. The respondents might feel free to respond on a questionnaire than a face-to-face dialogue, and the training appraisals. An essential part of the training appraisal system should be to assess the effectiveness of training delivered during the previous period and also by assessing the training needs in relation to a training objectives. Next we have the training appraisals. The application of training effectiveness for the previous period can be assessed by the few questions. This applies whether the training has been considered out of the formal program or not, by the progress of self-development or a learning on the job. Because of the immediate supervisor of the trainee usually conduct a training and appraisal, it should be possible for two people working together to assess the accessibility of the training needs of the trainees. This method provides a very effective feedback both in terms of evaluation and in terms of the value of the training which has been delivered. Next, we have the training for promotion. One of the major objectives of any program, any training, is to train the prospective manager for promotion. A manager must has to perform a never important roles after being promoted to a higher position. Next, we have training for promotion. The leader's role might be quite difficult for someone, and the degree of effectiveness of a manager after promotion can be an indicator of an effective training program, and the value of the methods development partly on who is responsible for promotion procedures within an organization. Next, we have training for promotion. It is very important to understand one of the responsibilities of the departmental line managers. For example, it may be a less valuable. Such decisions may be dismissed or idiosynchronized of the managers. On the other basis, well considered promotion procedures involving the various organizational have a likely relevance of the training experience of a promoted individuals to an evaluated of the training procedures. The trainers should track and monitor the career progress of the trainees relating to the promotion back to the course performance. If the people who attend the program are not coming through in terms of the promotion, some serious questions must be asked about the value of the trainee, and on the other hand, those having undergone the training are promoted on a regular basis. The trainers will get an appropriate responses to the training. This method also assists the trainer in associated manner whether the training is genuinely associated with them or not and related to the business needs or not. If a company with well designed promotion procedures, people are capable of meeting the business needs, are capable or likely to be promoted or not. Next, we have assessment development centers. Many of the companies, they run the centers designed to assess the company's potential, also called as assessment centers. The practice of providing the people an opportunity to assess the development needs along with the skill assessment, development centers are becoming popular. These exercises provide a lot of the useful information to the trainee which can be of the relevance of the process of evaluation. In assessment centers, the potential identified frequently relates back to the previous training and experiment and assist the trainer in evaluating how effective the previous training programs would have been. Now we have assessment of development centers. Development centers enables the trainers to find out whether the identified training needs of individuals are being met or not, number one, and the trainers cannot say with the proof that they are responding to the direct and individual identified needs of a group of the trainees or not. Evidence which emerges from the development centers, however, provides an ideal basis on the basis of which the evaluation program designed to test the effectiveness of training delivered against the checklist of specifically identified needs, assuming that other techniques of evaluation are applied to the training given. Then we have a repertory grids. The grid analysis helps the trainers assess the progress and the performance on the two dimensions. One, usually the trainer is concerned with assessing the progress and the performance both in terms of the skill development and the motivation level. Many people who have a necessary degree of the skills do not have a job effectiveness, the lack of motivation and the vice versa. The grid analysis assists the trainers to evaluate both the factors and plot them on a grid. Then we have repertory grids. Working with the line managers, this type of approach enables the trainers to assess the real training requirements and also to follow up the delivery of the training once it is completed. Then we have the surveys Many organizations conduct a lot of market research into the organizational customer attitudes, and each survey into the employee attitudes and the communications audit our common management experience. Such information provides a very useful base to which to assess the current performance and to build up the future performance. Next, we have the surveys. On the similar lines, the surveys are often conducted to find out the organizational training needs, and they apply with equal force to the evaluation of the training delivery. A full scale or even a shorter one, small quantitative surveys can be put effectively. In most of the organizations, sometimes the information the trainee is seeking may be of a more confidential nature, and then it may be necessary either to comply the services of an external consultant or to allow the people to respond unanimously. The questionnaire can also be used to find out how the people perceive and perceive the benefits from the training experience in the past, and also to identify whether whether believe would be most valuable training experience for them in the future or not. This method of survey is often most effective, and it is followed by a shorter qualitative interview based on the initial findings. Then we have a trainer's interviews. Interviewing the formal training provides a useful insight into the experience with the training. Structured interviews are most effective, and the structured interviews are most effective with each interviewee being asked the same set of questions. This allows the effective analysis of the responses and also helps in keeping the interview on the track. Interviewing is very time consuming and needs a lot of efforts. So the proper assessment of the cost and the benefits must be done before them in assessment tool. The greatest benefit of the interview based evaluation is that the trainer can gain a great deal of information through a mixture of closed and open questions designed to probe in detail and the training responses. So the trainer based behavior. This method is most valuable in relation to action based learning. The trainer observed behavior. It also the feedback is essential part of the evaluation, and the trainers cannot be expected should the behavior they observe to be repeated unless they provide some kind of positive reinforcement or not. Then we have a participation observation. The trainer observed behavior. Observation is a good method of any evaluation program. With the trainer observation, the trainee learns a great deal from their colleagues, which can help in observing and give the opinions, particularly about the behavior identified with the training. However, an objective feedback is very, very essential for such an experience. Observation is most effective when the trainer or participant is concerned with the immediate evaluation of the learning, and of course has less application to the long-term benefits of the training. Then we have records of performance. The records of performance, many organizations keep a record of the performance either through a detailed appraisal system or through the use of effective personnel reports, and in such a situation it is possible for use to identify the training needs and to evaluate the training delivered. The working closely with the line managers, the training needs to identify through the performance records how effective the individual employee has been in relation to the training received. And as all the methods of evaluation, the relevant performance records only to provide a real measure of the training effectively. And if the trainers can identify those people who have been most successful after the training, they can assume it to be very clear indication of training effectiveness. And it is also possible for the trainer in a situation to identify those people with the low performance levels who have not been received by the same experience as others. Again, this can also provide the evidence of the training needs as well as the measure of effectiveness of a training within the department. The action-based follow-up is a very important common practice that have most training experience. The trainers usually ask the participants to complete an action plan. However, these action plans, which can be in the form of the projects, are referred neither by the trainee nor by the trainer. And what, in other words, it has been the barriers of the implementation. In this method, the follow-up is the most effective training method. Develop the close relationship with the managers to understand what the problem is, what the genuine need is, and if they have not been undertaken willfully. Then we have training risk associated. It can be a design risk, that is the system amongst which it is designed is faulty, and among the several reasons leading to incorporation of the design of the training. Then we have a conduct risk. In the actual conduct of the training, even a good design, the possible risk may be cancelled of some or more of the planned training events, failure to get nominations, failure of the nominees attending the course, non-availability of the absence and inability of the course's director of integrating the inputs to the different speakers. Then we have the learning skills. The level of the learning could be at risk from the various factors like lack of interest, perception, punishment, etc. Then we have a transfer risk. The stage of the transfer may suffer from such difficulties as a lack of interest of individual trainees, the lack of support from the trainees' partial or implementation or the group of the joint committees into the action. Then we have a training risk. The evaluation of the training risk, the trainers to the trainees, has been ignored most of the training areas. Then we have evaluation of a training program. Course is important to improve the training as well as help the trainers and the trainees to perform more effectively. So I hope with all these conditions and all that, you have been able to understand the evaluation of the training and the implementation needs, the design, the follow-up, etc.